From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Soini Gray. Zimbabwe's government has issued a warning against political candidates prematurely announcing the election results. Home Affairs Minister Hubert Mpufu said those who do face prosecution and jail. This comes after senior MDC official Tendai Biti said party leader Nelson Chamisa had won the presidential race and alleged that the authorities were delaying the publication of the results. President Emerson Mnangagwa, 75, has also said he was confident of victory in Zimbabwe's first election since the former leader Robert Mugabe was ousted in November after 37 years in power. Zimbabwe's Electoral Commission has so far announced just 7 constituencies out of 210. ZANU-PF has 6, with the MDC Alliance winning 1. The chairman, Priscilla Chikumba, said that there was no rigging or cheating in the country's first election since the ousting of Robert Mugabe. Now, while the results are still coming in, the 40-year-old lawyer Nelson Chamisa of the opposition MDC is already claiming victory.
Presidential results will only be announced once the Commission has completed the collation of all presidential polling station returns in the 10,985 polling stations at the National Results Center. And as I previously stated this morning, the law provides that the presidential results must be announced within 5 days of an election. But if we're able to collate the results earlier, the nation will be advised sooner.
Senior party official Tendai Biti alleged that the authorities were delaying the publication of results, while the incumbent President Emerson Mnangagwa has said he was also confident of victory.
We will protect this vote. People of Zimbabwe have waited for so long, patiently. They've resisted the temptation of taking up unlawful and unconstitutional means of achieving change.
Your assassination and that of
We have won the election. We've collected the results. The results show that we have won. We are now daring and asking and pushing ZEC to announce the results.
Earlier, we were joined by Tatenda Mashanda. He's a Wake Forest University graduate in politics and international affairs, and he's a researcher and writer on African politics and geopolitical affairs. If there's a transition of power, the first in over 40 years, I asked if you expect it to be smooth, but actually I'm going to change slightly. I'm going to ask you, what will this mean for Zimbabwe, the transition of power?
Well, the transition of power in Zimbabwe will mean that, you know, we have started an interesting and productive journey fighting poverty, removing military state capture, because those are the things that we are fighting in this election. We are fighting poverty, we are fighting unemployment. Look, we have people who are in their 30s, graduates, but they've never seen a pay slip, and we are fighting those things: urban poverty, rural poverty, and the removal of state capture by the military. So the transition from power means that the Second Republic in Zimbabwe will be a democratic one, a democratic developmental state.
The UK government has published a report saying the abuse of vulnerable women and children by international aid workers and peacekeepers has long been endemic. The report by the House of Commons International Development Committee follows allegation after allegation of sexual misconduct and harassment by workers belonging to NGOs, which include Oxfam and Save the Children. The report studies accusations since 2002 and scrutinized in particular the 2010 Haiti earthquake relief mission. The findings also point to abuse in Liberia, Guinea, Sierra Leone, Cote d'Ivoire, and South Sudan, where crimes by aid workers have been carried out with impunity. To discuss this report on the sexual exploitation of people at their most vulnerable, we're now being joined by Kim Ives from Brooklyn, United States. Kim is the editor of Haiti Liberté. Hello, Kim. Thank you so much for joining us. Tell us, are you surprised by this new report, or were its findings already well known in aid organization circles?
Yes, the findings were well known. I think it's an open secret, if you will, what's going on. I mean, people, especially these politicians, express great surprise and shock and outrage. It's mostly posturing. In short, these NGOs, several imperial forces that are deployed to these countries, along with peacekeeping troops, supposedly by the UN. I mean, the UN has 14 peacekeeping missions around the world. 7 of them are in Africa. 1 is in Haiti, which is like an extension of Africa here in the Western Hemisphere. Another 3 are in the Middle East, in Palestine and Lebanon and Syria. So they're essentially occupation troops. And we've seen this kind of conduct from occupation troops since the time of the Roman Empire. They go and they prey on the local population. It's often young men who are, going to abuse young women. And, so the NGOs are sort of the soft side of these occupations. They're the ones who basically compensate for the debilitation that these occupations bring.
Now let me ask you a quick question. The details in this report are chilling. Over 250 of the victims who were interviewed were only between the ages of 10 and 17 years old. Scandals like these not only affect people in need, but they also break the trust of donors. What impact do you think it will have on aid work in the near future?
Well, I think the NGOs are going to continue. I mean, non-governmental organization is one of the greatest misnomers. They're all basically governmental organizations. Each one of them represents some government, have a government behind them, sometimes several. But, you have the US NGOs, you have the British NGOs, you have the French NGOs, and each one is working basically hand in glove with its government. So NGO is really a misnomer, and the governments are going to continue to use them because they don't do it directly anymore. Since colonialism went away, it's been neocolonialism that is disguised. So they use the UN, they use the NGOs, so you don't have to see the hand of the imperial countries in the affairs. And if something like this happens, like a sexual scandal or any other kind of scandal, they can blame it on the NGO.
Now, the report says the sexual exploitation and abuse by aid workers and peacekeepers have long been endemic. What, according to you, allowed it to happen for nearly 2 decades? And do you think it was deliberately ignored?
Yes, I think they wait. It's like corruption. It's part of the system. It's systemic. They have to use these occupying armies of aid workers, NGO workers, and troops from mostly poor countries to police other poor countries. Again, as I said, half of the UN missions are in Africa. This is because this is the continent they're trying to subjugate. Haiti, they're trying to subjugate. Nothing will change. There's going to be expressions of outrage and all kinds of commissions formed and declarations made, but I don't think you can reform the machine. The machine is there to dominate, and part of that domination is the sexual exploitation and abuse, the SEA as they call it, that comes with it.
Kim, that's a very sobering point upon which that we're going to have to end this interview, but thank you so much for chatting with us. We've been speaking to Kim Ives of Haiti Liberté. Now, 80 people have been injured when an Aero-Mexico plane crashed on Tuesday. No fatalities have been reported. Now, about 5 minutes after taking off from the Guadalupe Victoria International Airport near Durango City in Mexico. That's according to reports in local media. The airline is currently working to find out the details surrounding this particular crash. And 2 trains carrying tourists to Peru's famed Inca citadel of Machu Picchu ruins have collided, leaving several injured. The trains Peru Rail and Inca Rail crashed around 90 kilometers near the town of Ollantaytambo, just a few dozen kilometers away from the most popular tourist attraction in Peru, Machu Picchu, which was declared a World Heritage Site by UNESCO in 1983 and is included in the list of the 7 wonders of the modern world in 2007. To Brazil now, where the caravan against hunger continues. It's a protest meant to highlight the rise in poverty following the coup against the former president Dilma Rousseff. Our correspondent in Belo Horizonte, Andre Vieira, has been following the caravan, and he sends this report.
On its 4th day, the caravan against hunger reached Belo Horizonte. This is its 3rd stop after traveling over 1,800 kilometers from its starting point in Caetés, in the state of Pernambuco. The caravan heads to the MST offices in Minas Gerais to host an event against hunger and to demand that former President Lula da Silva be released from jail.
We are denouncing the return of poverty, the return of hunger for millions of Brazilians, but we are also shouting Lula libre. Lula represents the people. He is our source of sustenance. There is no place for hunger in the society we want.
Data collected in the semi-arid region of the country shows that ever since the 2016 coup against Dilma Rousseff, 7 million people are living in extreme poverty in this region alone.
Nós estamos vivendo golpe.
We are living the aftermath of a coup that was carried out by capitalist interests, by foreign players, by multinationals. This coup has the support of powerful nations that do not care about the Brazilian people and do not want our nation to be sovereign.
Tem o apoio de países poderosos.
During Monday's activities in Belo Horizonte, many artists took part in the demonstration. They condemned the fact that Lula is a political prisoner, and they are demanding that he be allowed to take part in October's general elections, as is his constitutional right.
This march is meant to renew our energies, to retake the streets and demand Lula's freedom.
From Belo Horizonte, the caravan will head to Sao Paulo and then Curitiba to visit Lula. More so than carrying a message of resistance, the caravan will reaffirm the belief that only Lula can stop hunger from spreading further.
Okay, time now for a short break, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. During an official visit to the Caribbean, Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arias emphasized the mechanisms of cooperation and integration between Petrocaribe and ALBA TCP. Arias met with Dominica's Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit, where they consolidated regional integration. During the bilateral meeting, Skerrit expressed his solidarity with the Venezuelan government.
And people of Venezuela, and to wish them all the best. I know that there are challenges, but we have to work together to address those challenges which confront us from time to time. Dominica stands in continued solidarity with Venezuela and the Venezuelan people. We've had excellent relations for the last 40 years since our independence, and those relations will continue to be strengthened and deepened between Dominica and Venezuela.
Ariasa went on to visit Grenada to meet with Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell, who ratified the work agenda established last year when Ariasa visited several Caribbean countries with the objective of promoting a new geopolitical sphere. The social leader Milagro Sala, a political prisoner in the Argentine government of President Mauricio Macri, has been found unconscious in detention. Telesur Sabrina Roth has the latest.
Before the beginning of the fourth audit of the case known as Pibes Villeros, where social leader Milagro Sala and 29 other people are accused of illegal association, extortion and fraud to the state, news came announcing that she was found unconscious in the prison where she is detained, in the area of El Carmen. This is a sui generis imprisonment created specifically for her after the order of first the Inter-American Commission for Human Rights and then of the Inter-American Court. The committee working for the Milagro Sala's freedom blamed the judicial system for this because it was they who sent her to this residence far away from medical attention and where there is no phone service. She remains unconscious. Sala's defense reported this to Criminal Court No. 3 and the emergency service, which arrived at the prison 40 minutes after the call. The place where she will be treated is still unknown.
In Argentina, teachers are holding a second day of strikes to demand an official response to their salary demands.
Thousands of teachers started a national strike organized by the Confederation of Education Workers, with classes being suspended in at least 5 provinces, among them Buenos Aires and the federal capital.
The consequences of the call to the national parties brings conflict to the provinces because national funds are being withheld, breaching the Educational Financial Act. The government does not comply with the law.
Teachers won't accept this, and the conflict will get worse as long as the government doesn't understand that we will not accept a decrease in our salaries.
The protest is a measure that will last for 48 hours, and is a demand for the reintegration of the National Party, eliminated by the government of Mauricio Macri in 2017. Teachers in Buenos Aires joined the strike despite the attempt of the governor, María Eugenia Vidal, to prevent it.
This measure doesn't violate any mandatory conciliation because it wasn't objected to, nor was it questioned by the authorities. It is a national measure.
Teachers denounced that the government plans to eliminate all the educational incentives for public education and student training as part of the tax adjustment that is led to comply with the commitment assumed with the International Monetary Fund.
There is a national project to deteriorate public education. We have said that we will continue fighting for the social right to education, for a new educational financing law, and in defense of educational retirement. And what is happening now? We anticipated it.
It is the 5th strike from the education workers in this school year, and the teachers do not rule out to continue next week after the denial from the national government to negotiate a fair wage increase.
The U.S. activist Angela Davis has visited Costa Rica to talk about feminism and the role of women activists to promote global change.
Latin America has always been a source of hope for the world.
Hope for the world. That's how Angela Davis describes the Latin American region. She recently visited Costa Rica to meet activists and share experiences. She highlighted the importance of social movements as force of change in the society.
I think it comes from movements. Politics, official politics are important, but only insofar as they are connected to what is happening on the ground. I would talk about a dialectical relationship between that realm of electoral politics and the realm of social movement.
Davis sent a special message to Afro women activists to remember the need to fight all together within the community and not taking on the struggle alone.
The women's movement is not simply a movement for women. when women rise up, that means the entire world rises with them. When women move forward, they bring the entire world with them. And especially when black women, who are the most subjugated of all, move forward, they bring everyone else with them.
Angela Davis became an inspiration for women across the world, thanks to her radical activism. She was one of the FBI's most wanted during the 70s, jailed and released after an international campaign was launched. She continues her fight as an activist for human rights, especially focused on women.
We have seen 50 years of development of radical movements, and precisely she's a role model to see how we need to keep fighting and always maintain a critical and radical mind thinking.
Angela Davis' visit has been a unique chance for Costa Ricans to learn about her life, her fight, and her struggle for women's empowerment. Her contribution to social movements is not often recognized enough.
Women have always been a part of social movements throughout history, but we have been made invisible.
At 74 years old, Angela Davis, philosopher, black activist, feminist, former U.S. vice president candidate, and professor, has visited different South American countries to keep the debate and the fight by social movements alive.
The organization Colombia Davis delivered reports to the Special Jurisdiction for Peace about violence against the LGBT community in Colombia. Director Marcela Sanchez handed the report to the president of the JEP, Patricia Lanires. They are key to the process of repatriation for victims. Colombia Davis took the opportunity to highlight the importance of the community's voice being heard for the strengthening of the collective memory of what occurred during the war. And the former Colombian president, Alvaro Uribe, has been called to appear before the Supreme Court on September 3rd in the case against him for bribery and fraud linked to witness tampering. Senator Ivan Cespedes accused Uribe of organizing a campaign against several Supreme Court judges.
Es mentira que el expresidente Álvaro Uribe.
It is a lie that former President Álvaro Uribe has accepted and respected the Supreme Court decision, because at the same time, he is making an announcement in favor of the court's decision. There is a dirty campaign against several Supreme Court judges, such as Judge Barceló. An alleged intelligence report leaked by a website called El Expediente claims that the President, Vice President, Judge Barceló, and me held a meeting to bribe Supreme Court judges with $5 million from FARC members. That is a lie. In the last couple of hours, we held a meeting with the Ministry of Defense, and he announced that such a report doesn't exist.
Organizations in defense of human rights in Honduras gave a complete report of the violations committed after last year's elections to representatives of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights.
Human rights activists highlighted the vulnerable situation in which families of victims of state repression are. They also show figures of femicide and on attacks against freedom of speech, which were committed after the elections of 2017.
The IACHR Commission being here is already a positive thing. That the people are here, that the victims are here, that people provide evidence and data on the human rights violations, this all is positive.
IACHR representatives have listened to the testimonies of victims and shared reactions from their first meetings.
Our first meeting with them left us greatly concerned. There are some very specific issues that the country has to take into account, and the main one is justice, to give just reparations to the victims.
For the most vulnerable sectors, the visit of this commission will not guarantee the attacks will stop, but at least the government will be exposed.
We are dealing with an authoritarian administration. It's a dictatorship, and therefore all journalists that are not part of the government's agenda become the target and can be attacked at any time.
IACHR representatives assured that they will visit the prisons where those who participated in electoral protests in 2017 are being detained.
At least 15 people have been killed in Jalalabad in Afghanistan when gunmen stormed a government building and a suicide bomber blew himself up at the entrance. At least 40 people were trapped in the building before they could be rescued by security forces. The attack came just when reports came in of a bomb attack killing at least 11 people and wounding more than 30 in the western province of Farah. There was no immediate claim of responsibility for the attack, but several recent attacks in the Jalalabad area have been claimed by the Islamic State militants. Representatives of the Namibian Herero people in New York have filed a lawsuit against Germany over genocide that took place in the beginning of the 20th century during Germany's colonial presence in Southwest Africa. In 1904, the Herero rebelled against the colonial rule of Germany, and the people of Nama followed. General Lothar von Trotha was responsible for suppressing the rebellion with the use of violence and extensive starvation practices that led to the deaths of tens of thousands. After discovering an extermination order, the United Nations classified it as the first genocide of the 20th century in 1985. Only in 2015, Germany officially recognized it as a genocide and part of a race war. They refused, however, to pay reparations. Since then, negotiations have begun between the two countries. And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. You should also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Telsur English. I'm Soini Gray. Thank you for watching.